Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Danny Seaboy. Probably the oldest student here. But I did a little information on something I know, which is bass drums. I always get asked, why are you guys using the bass drum? The bass drum that we currently use in, wrong screen, sorry. Skip that one. Skip that one. It's like this, okay? My name is Danny Seaboy. I'm an enrolled member of the System Wapton Oyate. Also I'm part White Chippewa and part of the Meskwaki Nation. Currently an employee of UTCC and presently a student as well. In order to understand my upbringing and belief system, I have to give you a brief history of my family background. Coming from my Wakbegute, Dakota side, we originated out of Minnesota area called Redwood Falls and the present location of the Lower and Upper Sioux reservations. My relatives are famous for the Minnesota Uprising. The famous ones in U.S. history are Inkpaduta and Wamedi Sapo. These are chiefs of the Wakbegute band that helped the Middle Wahkiton that started the Minnesota Uprising, but then sided with the USA. The Wakbegute carried out the war and battled on against the USA and its genocidal ways and the forced changes to Native American culture and lifestyle. The Wakbegute fought to keep the original Dakota ways intact and not give into the forced treaty obligations the USA was trying to enforce. Reason being, the treaties were not signed earlier, we're always being broken and leaving our obligations from the previous treaties. This was being observed from some of the people and decided to act on this devious act the government was doing. The battles to preserve the original people's way of life had started, and this was met with much opposition. All tribes in their cultural and religious beliefs had instruments that represented animals and various sounds that they encountered. Others duplicating sound that were heard. The presentation covers one instrument that is still used today, the drum. I read many ways of how the people receive the drum, and these contain many ideals. One I always think of is the rabbit. The story goes that a rabbit was something, a warning when hunters approached. A rabbit stood on a hollowed-out log and was warning the other animals by thumping its feet on a hollowed-out log. The hunters saw this and heard the sound it made. Eventually figured out how to duplicate the sound through the use of hollowed-out log and utilize some hide as a drum head. That's an example. These drums were considered sacred. These types of drums were called traditional. This way of life was frowned upon by the early settlers. Through the wars and conflicts, the ways of Dakota were outlawed, like many other ways that encountered new people. One of the beliefs the Dakota had was, in battle, do not take anything of value. The Washichu people believed in, example, money and highly prized objects that was observed that they considered of value. One item that was an exception was their drums. They had good construction, they were dependable and sacred because of the creation theory of how the drums came to be. At the time of the Dakota conflict, Minnesota conflict, the warriors picked out a drum that was found after one of the battles. That's a drum head, that's just an example. So of the hardware they got, and one of the drums. Let's go through on the drums. I made those highs on the drums I put on myself. The reason being the old Dakota ways were outlawed and its instruments as well. Eventually it was learned through trial and error that if they used a victory style drum, they were left alone to perform their songs and dances in public. In the nights, the traditional ways were practiced. In the days, it was back to using the victory drums. If you go back in history, pictures, you can see the victory drum, style drum, is just about every picture that depicts a native way of life, or dancing and singing. The traditional drums, you may see a few. In 1978, that all changed. The Freedom of Religious Law Act was passed. After many years of being outlawed, the native religious ways were once again allowed to be practiced. These ways were saved in part by the people utilizing the bass drum to remember, practice, and share the songs through the drum. Victory style drums. This is what is meant by the bass drum saving a culture. I got more. Here we go. I'm still learning how to use this thing, sorry. My family is directly related to the Inkpaduta and Wambri Sapa of the Wakpigita band. They are also the ones that took one of the drums and kept the ways of the Dakota going, even though it was outlawed. They fled to Canada, and over the years, the families moved back. With this move, the songs and ways have been carried on. The outlawed saved the outlawed ways. After all these years, the use of the once outlawed traditional drum could be used. In this family tradition, I have carried on the ways of the bass drum, and I too will be teaching my future generations the ways of the drum and the traditional ways that were saved. The songs and meanings that were hidden in the drums all these years can now be used. As the person who refurbs and modifies bass drums, I always wanted to tell a little bit of how and why bass drum is used in Native American culture. Over the years, I have changed my techniques to match the new techniques and change with the new materials that are always changing in these times. I have added a few pictures of some of the drums I have completed in the last year alone. I usually trade if someone wants one of my works.
What do you trade for?
All depends on what the area you want to trade. It's not what. This drum here, I just had up here, this is the 1920 Victory drum. They no longer have that brand of drum anymore. You see the single tension rods, that's probably back up to the 1800s. It's that style of drum. I put my own hides on, like this one right here. My boy wanted to paint it, so I let him paint it. This is one of the drums that we sang with Fort Peck Sioux. That silver drum in front is 26 by 10. You see all the money on there? That's all the money that was given to the drum over the summer. So it's kind of like a collection. So I get to brag a little bit that we don't collect the money that they throw us, because that's we'll shoot you away. So it was just considered to be, you know, a decoration. And then this is a drum I did for Mandaree singers, the old Mandaree drum. That's that drum again. This is what I did for Iron Bull over the summer. And that's a new one I just did a couple months back. These are my grandsons.
Aww.
They know how to sing and hit the drum. This one here is, that one right there on the left-hand side there is just turned a year old last month, and this one here just turned, it'll be 9 months on the 27th. That's one of the drums a traditional drum I made. Like I said, I adapted. I used rope on there, poly rope instead of rawhide, because I like to experiment. They actually last a little bit longer. And that's my oldest grandson when he was, I think, 10 months. And that's it.